Ivan Ilyich is a very successful 45-year-old judge at the top of his career. He's wealthy, he's famous. He's someone who has spent his life jumping through hoops, climbing ladders, and he's finally made it. Ivan Ilyich loves authority. He loves that moment when, as a judge, he is walking into the courtroom. Everyone rises, and the bailiff says, "The judge is coming! The judge is coming!" He loves that moment. He loves clarity. Clarity. It is very clear to Ivan who is right and who is wrong, who is innocent and who is guilty. And Ivan loves order and discipline, which is why that day that he goes to the doctor's office with that undisciplined pain in his side, and he finds out that he has some mysterious, incurable illness, blows his mind. Me dying? That's impossible. That's against the rules. But sure enough, he is dying, and the pain gets worse and worse, and he becomes weak, and he becomes emaciated, and literally within a matter of weeks, this beautiful, rational, orderly world that he has created for himself comes tumbling down. In a matter of weeks, all of those walls that he has put up to protect himself from other people, they are now the prison from which he most wants to escape. And if before his illness, his favorite moment was that one of walking into the courtroom, now the only moment that means anything to him is the one when his 12-year-old boy, with whom Ivan has hardly had any relationship, that 12-year-old boy comes into his dying father's room, sees that his dad is too weak to speak or to move, and he takes his father's hand and he brings it to his lips and he kisses it. So we were talking about that story by Tolstoy, the death of Ivan Ilyich at the correctional center, on the day that one of the senior administrators decided to come visit our class. Now, I had met this woman a few weeks earlier. She's very buttoned up, very bureaucratic woman, very somewhat authoritarian. She said to my students and me during our orientation, she said, "No first names. The residents must call the students by your last names. And no personal conversations in this program. Just keep it at the professional, scholastic level." So after class, being the somewhat disobedient student that I am, I'm talking to my students and I'm saying, that's ridiculous. Of course you're going to call each other by your first names. You're the same age, for crying out loud. And yes, have those personal conversations. That's what we do in this program. And look, if someone complains or whatever, just put it off on me. So you can imagine my fear on the day that I show up, and there she is. There she is. And she's sitting on the opposite end of the room from me, about 10 feet away from one of the tables. So I can't hear what she hears, but I see her. And I notice after about 10 minutes, her eyes are kind of focused, and she's leaning in like this, listening. And I'm thinking, uh-oh. What's she hearing? 10 minutes later, she picks up her chair, she slides it over, she sits down at the table, and she proceeds to have a conversation with one of the residents. And I'm freaking out at this point. I'm thinking, I'm going to be reprimanded when this class is over. Or worse, she's going to pull the plug on the whole darn program. So I go up to my students after class as we're walking across the prison courtyard, and I go up to the students at that table and I ask them, what was that about? And one of my students very matter-of-factly explains, well, we were talking about the scene when Ivan says goodbye to his son, and one of the residents shared that he lost his grandmother a year earlier, his grandmother that he loved. And apparently the administrator recently lost her own brother. And she was overhearing this conversation, and she was so moved by it that she wanted to be a part of it. So there she is, the administrator and the resident, having a conversation about the theme of loss in Tolstoy. And I'm thinking, well, so much for the no personal conversation rule. But I'm also thinking triumphantly that in that moment, what she saw was not a young criminal. What she saw was a young man with ideas and emotions and the ability to articulate them and reflect on them through the lens of literature. And what he saw was not an evil, stern, authoritarian figure, but a woman about the same age as his own late grandmother, who also knows what it feels like to love and to lose. Through their shared loss, they found that connection with one another.